when it's ready. I think we're live. So we're here on our very last guest live for the series Healing Within and Without. And we've got Radha Wilson, I'm just making up your name, Radha Wilson Jeffries, as our very last interviewee for our series. So I'm really happy to have Radha here to talk to us today. So thank you for
Thank
coming.
you for asking me. I'm so excited to be here, Cheryl. Thank you so much for being your finale. I'm excited.
I know, like special place there, haven't you? The very last. And you know, I'm sure next year there'll be some other weird and wonderful things that I come up with. But for now, I think I'm ready to just be like, the end.
Yeah.
Put the lid on it, because I was just saying before we came on to Radha that I've found myself getting more and more anxious as the weeks have gone on, because I've had this looming thing. I've got this thing to do and now I'm committed to it and I've got to do it. So this is the end. We'll call it a day. They'll all be there to watch back on the Simply Natal YouTube channel, so they'll be accessible. But and there might be something new in the new year, who knows. So let's get started. And Radha, just to begin with, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, I'd love to. So as she said, Cheryl, I'm Radha Wilson Jeffries. I'm a midwife and I'm an emotional health coach. I'm also a 3-step rewind practitioner with birthing awareness, and I am also a real birth teacher with the Real Birth Company. So I've got quite a mixed bag of different strings to my bow and different things that I do. But my main focus, probably for the last 6 months to 12 months, has been the emotional health coaching that I do, in the Midwife Sparkle Method program that I'm sure I'm going to tell you all about later on this session.
Absolutely. And the emotional health coach stuff is really exciting. So I've been watching that and kind of seeing how you've been progressing with that this year, because when we first met, you were a midwife still, and you were doing the Real Birth Company stuff. And
Yeah.
that's how I kind of got to know you, was doing that stuff, and then this kind of changed direction. And perhaps throughout the course of the conversation, we'll get to know how that happened and why that happened.
I'm sure.
So the series that I've been doing, and you've seen a little bit of it as time's gone on since October, but the series is called Healing Within and Without. So my first question to you is, what does that mean to you, your interpretation of that title?
So this is the one question that I actually made some notes on, and I'm glad I did, because I really liked what first came to mind when I first read that question. So I believe that healing happens from the inside out. It's a very personal journey for each individual, based on what's brought them to the beginning of that healing journey, based on what experience it is. But although it's a very personal journey that someone will undertake, it might feel appropriate to get help with that from your partner, from your friend, from your mum, from a professional, So although healing within is a within, and it's a within you kind of personal journey, and you can do that without anyone else, it's that personal to you as an individual, that you can do it alone, or you can and may want to get some external help from someone who's maybe walked the path already, or has some additional training that they can help you along in your journey with. So
then that becomes the healing without, healing within, and then healing without. Yeah, I like it. Thank you. There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. It's just nice to know what people's take on it is. You know, I'm an RE teacher, so I love being able to throw things in and just go, what does that mean?
What does it mean to you? I like that.
Okay, so obviously I've been talking about healing. Healing is something that's become very important to me through my journey, and is the reason why now I call myself the healing birth doula. So because I'm focusing in on being able to help people find their healing journey through birth. I want to ask you why healing is important to you personally. Is there something about healing and healing journeys that is relevant to your life?
Very, I think, on so many levels. I don't even really know quite where to start with that question, because it's so intrinsic in everything that I'm about. Healing from stuff we don't talk about. It's obviously it's massive, but I'm really passionate about getting the concept of healing out into the mainstream to be something that we're not frightened of, is not a stigma. Like, it should be something that's talked about as easily as kind of physical health is, emotional health, mental health. It shouldn't be something that we should be afraid to worry or afraid to or frightened to talk about. I've been going on a massive healing journey, and the most specific and relevant one, I guess, to talk about is the birth of my son. And similar to your story, Cheryl, I know what's happened when you had your kids. When I had Harrison 3.5 years ago, I was a midwife when I gave birth, and I openly talk on my own social media and to anyone that'll listen, basically, that I didn't have a very good experience with him, not because the care was substandard or not because people weren't kind to me. I was birthing in the hospital that I worked at. I think as I've kind of come through that kind of dark cloud and come out of the other side, a lot of the trauma, and I would describe it as a traumatic birth that I had, a lot of the trauma that I experienced was down to my own expectations of what I thought birth was going to be like, what I believed birth should be, and how I feel I either did or didn't live up to my own expectations and the own high standards that I'd put upon myself to have a certain type of birth experience. And when that certain type of birth experience didn't happen, then it left me feeling like I'd failed. Which is common, and I know we both work with women and birthing people and families that have that same residual feeling about their birth experience. But even before I'd had my little boy, I still was aware of trauma in birth, and I'd cared for women that had traumatic birth experiences. And then when I had my little boy, I then understood it a lot more. And even though everyone's birth and everyone's journey is different, I understood it on a deeper level of obviously how becoming a parent smashes you apart, and you have to kind of rebuild yourself, because obviously yes, the baby's born, but as we know, so is the parent. So it was kind of having Harry really that set me off on that tangent of healing myself. And that's what led me into the Real Birth Company stuff when I was doing the educating parents on birth physiology and how to release fear and have a positive experience. Even while I did that training, and I was a midwife, and I was still learning then about birth physiology, and I was like, oh my God, if I'd have known this when I had Harry, maybe I would have done X, Y, and Z. I didn't even understand that. Why didn't I know that? I was like, oh no, women need to know this. Birthing people need to know about this. And so that sort of set me off on the tangent of the Real Birth Company, and I love what they do. I love their course, it's fantastic, and I am still a real birth teacher, but I've kind of obviously taken a little bit of a sidestep from that as I'm doing some of the work that I'm doing. But then it wasn't until I then did my 3-step rewind training with birthing awareness with Mark Harris, and actually was taken through the 3-step rewind as part of the training. You have to experience it to know kind of what it's about, and actually focused on my own birth trauma and released some of that, or a lot of that, through being taken through the rewind. I was like, wow, this is magic. This is like power. This is releasing the like negative attachments to the memory and refiling it and processing it again. And it was so powerful. I then obviously was like, I need to get this out there. So then I started offering the 3-step rewind in person at that time. This was before the whole COVID thing, and I have been doing it via Zoom this year. Yeah, you asked me one question and I've totally probably answered the other 5 questions that you had to answer me, but that's just me.
We've gone around, but that just shows that it's all linked together, isn't it?
Linked together.
Our own journeys that take us to, you described kind of being broken into pieces, which is the way that I described myself after my birth trauma too. Broken.
Yeah.
There was no other way to describe it. I didn't know how else to describe it. Broken, just broken. And of course, it's not just birth that can do that, and we know that birth doesn't have to do that either. But it's not just birth that can do that. We can be broken by all sorts of things in our life, and difficult experiences, often related to trauma. Or you've got a message from Zoe saying, Radha, you are an inspiration.
Oh, thank you, darling.
Lovely.
That's lovely. Oh, thank you.
And yeah, and then so we have the broken feeling, and then the healing comes from then rebuilding ourselves. Then after that, finding ourselves again, feeling like we know who we are again, and we believe in ourselves. So when we've experienced something like that, it sends us on a healing journey that we never asked for. We didn't just wake up one day and go, do you know what? Fancy doing a bit of self-healing. We kind of don't have a choice. It's make or break. We either decide to heal and find a way to do that, or we can't live broken. We can't do that. So we have to decide. And in some ways, that's the reason why I've taken part in a project before. What was it now? Some sort of research project through university from a PhD student who was doing research into post-traumatic growth, and I hadn't heard of it up until then. She just said she wanted to speak to people who'd experienced trauma and then had gone on to like change something about their life. And when I was speaking to her, she was telling me, sorry, I've got an itchy foot. There we go, disappear. I'm back. She I discovered this phenomenon. It was a few years ago now, about how you can find post-traumatic growth. So then that's kind of where the healing comes in, isn't it? It's like we can actually grow and become something different and new and even better than before. And we would never have got there before if we hadn't have had the trauma in the first place. So I've gone completely off topic as well. But let's see what we can bring out of the questions. So yeah, you've done some of your own healing and found ways of doing that. Why is healing important then in a wider context that's outside of just the individual who's doing the healing?
Because your own trauma has implications for other people. So we know as a mother and as a parent, your ability to bond with your children, if you're fragmented and you're trying to help a whole new person learn who they are, and you don't really know who you are, and there's that fragmentation, it's really difficult. So there's a bonding element. But I love how you've just described that growth element. What did you call it? Post-traumatic growth. I love that. Growth. I've never heard of that phrase before, and I absolutely love that. And that resonates so strongly with me in the journey that I've been on. Because as a lot of people listening to this, if they've had traumatic experiences, can resonate. Because I am considerably different on a personal level, on a professional level, on a physical level, after carrying a nearly 10-pound baby to 42 plus weeks. I'm physically very different and saggy where it wasn't before, etc. And it's so important to one, kind of take away the stigma around trauma and healing, and that people internalize it. It's my fault. No, it can happen to anybody. Particularly in the work that I do as a midwife, and this, I guess, is going to lead me into why it is that I do what I do. Because I'd had Harrison, I was 10 months postnatal, I was facing going back to work, I had postnatal anxiety, I had PTSD, intrusive thoughts, all the stuff. And the thought of going back to work in birth, surrounded by my trigger, so beautiful big pregnant bellies, birth, postnatal, feeding, I could not imagine anything more awful, of being surrounded by that trigger every day, and then coming home to my family, still breastfeeding, I still felt very raw and postnatal even at 10 months. Externally, I was smiling, I was fine, I was hiding it pretty well, but under the surface, I was really struggling. And I don't think anyone really knew, because I don't think I even really knew. I just knew that I was terrified of going back to work. And when I went back to work, I just couldn't escape. I couldn't escape the triggers. I remember going back onto the labour ward when I'd had my little boy to go and collect some equipment for a home birth, and I had a panic attack. And I had to go into the sluice and have a moment, because I was like flashback into me wheeling down the corridor to theatre and me crying, and I could feel I could almost like, oh gosh, I could almost feel the feeling of my theatre gown being wet, and it was from all my tears as I just sobbed on my way down to theatre, and all my gown was soaking, and I could almost feel it, like, and it was my sweat, obviously from the panic attack, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going back down to theatre again, and I was just flashing back, and it was awful, and I was like, God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And it went on and on, and I was working in community, so I wasn't actually up at the hospital very much, so I was doing a little bit of avoidance as much as I could. But it got to the point where I was just like, I can't do this. How can I do this? I am like re-traumatizing myself every single day when I go to work. How can I do this? I can't. But I love what I do. I love my job. I've got a purpose in the world. I've got a voice. I want to use it. I want to use my experience for good. What am I going to do? And so that's kind of what led me into the real birth training. Well, maybe I can empower parents so they can have a positive experience. I can talk to them a little about me if that's relevant, and I can share some of myself, where that's relevant, and I can kind of, help them prepare the best they can, which led me then into the rewind training to sort of help them again if they did have a difficult experience. Maybe then I can help them process some of that and help them on the journey. And then I think I was reading a book about some sort of business book or something about maybe marketing or something for social media, and I just thought, I need to do more. What if someone like me has got certain expectations of birth, and they maybe don't feel like they deserve a good birth, or there's been so much trauma from their childhood that they can't, they've got like imposter syndrome in the birth room, or they've got obedience to authority, or they've got these perfectionist tendencies, and there's all these other kind of emotional health things, all these, like, what I thought was kind of like, like blockages that was going to stop them from speaking up and being like, no, I don't want this. Like, what would stop some people from speaking up, and what would enable other people to speak up? And I was like, what do I need? I need some kind of quick course, or some like NLP training, or something, to like quick counseling thing to kind of to complete the rest of the triangle, because you've got like the prepare for your birth, like release any trauma from previous experiences, and then like step into your power was like where I was going with it. Like, speak your truth, be authentic, like put your boundaries up and maintain them. And I was like, yeah, but what if a woman's really frightened of doing that? Like, how can I help her? And that led me to meeting Sarah Brennan in the Emotional Health Coach Academy. And I'd met her through another thing about 6 months previous. And I just messaged Sarah and I was like, hey, Sarah, do you know anyone that does this like NLP, CBT, like hypnotherapy stuff? And she's like, yeah, me. Kind of what I do in the academy. And I was like, oh, really? Let's have a chat. So I was like, wow. So I got a way lot more than I bargained for. Because, I had a call with her. She says, yeah, it's what we do in the academy. I was like, I need this. Women need this. Women need a coach to help them through their stuff so they can be authentic and they can speak their truth and not have obedience to authority and say what needs to be said in the birth room and get the birth that they want. And another wonderful thing, just like with the rewind, is that actually I then continued my own healing journey, because again, to be a coach, you've got to heal your stuff so you can help other people. You've got to reflect on yourself and go deep, really deep, and look at your beliefs and look at your values and look at your thinking and look at your all the
conditioning.
Your values, your conditioning, your distorted beliefs about yourself and the world. And that was a massive one for me. So obviously coming out of the other end of that, I was like, yeah, I could totally do this. Like, women, heal your birth, heal your life. Like, I was so passionate about it. And then I was talking to Sarah and I was like, you know what, Sarah? Since I've been putting my emotional health coaching stuff out there into the world, like, so many midwives have been messaging me saying, oh my gosh, it's like you're inside my head. You're talking about me. And I'm like, I'm talking about birthing women and people. And then my Sarah just laughed and she was like, yeah, I've worked with loads of midwives. Like, why don't you do a program particularly for midwives? You are a midwife. You've been on this healing journey and you know what it's like. You've been on both sides of the coin. You've been the mother struggling, really struggling, enough to want to leave your job. And you've been the midwife as well, on the other side of that, trying to pretend like everything's okay when it's really not. So it kind of, I just thought, that's the missing piece. That's the missing piece. If the midwife is authentic with her boundaries, she's not got distorted beliefs about herself and the world. If she can hold herself in that birthing room, being the sort of person that's holding the space in the room for the woman, then she's going to hold space for the woman to step into her own power with confidence. And I was like, it's about the midwives. It's about the women, but the midwives are the birth keepers, and it's about the midwives. So that's set me all off on that.
And it was born.
And it was born.
Reclaim your sparkle.
Yeah. Yep.
Reclaim your sparkle. And it's so funny because, like, I met you like at an event when you were doing about the birth workshop, or what's it called, real birth thing. And then you were doing that work, and you were talking about that, and then you started talking about midwives and reclaiming your sparkle, and it felt like when I was watching that, and I was watching that from social media, but it was like, there she is. Like I felt that. I felt like you'd fallen into place. That was where you were meant to be. And I think it's perfect, and it's what a lot of people who are working in NHS midwifery in particular need, to be able to cope with the challenges of the system, and I'd imagine the feelings that, I mean, the vicarious trauma that comes from that, but also the feelings of not being able to fully do the job that you set out to do because of the restrictions that you've got to face, and the timing and all of that, and feeling like you're not serving the people well enough. It's a hard job. So I think, there's so many of us working in the birth world to try and improve things, either system wise, through maternity voices partnerships, and that sort of thing, or on the side of the people who are giving birth, empowering them, giving them knowledge, helping them break down fear and understand what their role is. And you're right, it's like this thing that was missing was helping empower the midwives too, helping empower them and step into their own, so that they can feel strong enough to be able to say no when something's not right, but also do the best job they can under whatever circumstances. So I think, it's awesome. So let me check my questions again, because we've
tangented.
I mean, why is healing important in a wider context kind of went really wide. But I mean, you've talked about your own healing birth. No, you've talked about your own birth trauma. So my next question is, what does healing birth mean to you? So if you've had a traumatic birth and then you are to have a healing birth, what is that? What is a healing birth? And actually, I say when you've had a traumatic birth, but it's not always the case. So a person doesn't have to have a traumatic birth to then have a healing birth. There could be any reason why birth becomes a healing experience for someone. But what does it mean to you?
Well, the first thing I thought of when you said that is I feel like I've already had a healing birth, and it's my own rebirth.
Yeah.
It's been the birth of myself, because I don't know if we're planning on having any more kids. I don't know if, obviously no one ever knows what the future's going to bring. And before I kind of became an emotional health coach, I always kind of was in that external mindset of like, if I have another birth go the way that I wanted my first birth to go, then I'll heal. If I get my home birth, if I get my delayed cord clamping, if I get my then I'll be okay. But that was very external. Yeah. That's kind of putting like the pressure. That was kind of what happened the first time. That's the struggle that I had of like, I had the birth plan, I had the amazing doula, I had the midwife I knew that was going to care for me at my home birth. I had a healthy pregnancy up to 42 weeks, and then some complications happened. And I kind of think if I'd have had that kind of more growth mindset in my first pregnancy of like, birth is unpredictable, but there's always going to be some element of influence that I've got. And I've got my birth plan, which is external. I've got my doula, which is external. I've got my hospital of choice, which is external, and my midwife, and that's all external. But what is the influence that I have that I can, what is the influence that I can put into place to guarantee that whatever happens, I'm going to be all right? And that growth mindset is strongly believing you can influence your situation. but I wasn't in that mindset. I was in a fixed mindset, just so if the unit's not busy that day, then I'll have a good birth. If that certain midwife's on duty, then it'll be all right because she'll look after me. It was all very external, and that's kind of, as I've come out the other end of that healing journey, that's what I've kind of realised. I need to step more into that growth mindset. So I kind of was still very external, and even up to probably the last 12 months, thinking if I had another baby, then I'd have a home birth, and then I'll feel all right again. But I actually realized that if we did have another child and I chose to have an elective cesarean, that could still be a healing birth. I know you had an elective birth with your little boy, and that was a healing birth for you, taking some of that control back, getting some of that power back, kind of feeling empowered in the choices you were making, and that was obviously the right decision for you. And even up to quite, more recently, I've been thinking, oh gosh, if I ended with another section again, it would just be like trauma again, and It wasn't the cesarean that was traumatic. It was because I wasn't exercising the influence that I had. I was so external and fixated on what I couldn't control and trying to control the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
So a healing birth, again, is an individual thing. It's down to whatever that person wants. And I guess it also depends on the reasons that they feel that their previous birth was traumatic. And if if it's totally different to that birth, then it's not traumatic. Or if the midwife's nice to me, then so I guess to come full circle, it comes down to the mindset of the person that's birthing and how much influence they remember that they actually have, that they will be all right no matter what happens, because ultimately the choice is theirs in what happens. They get the final say in their birth experience, even if they don't feel like they have that power, they absolutely do. And that's why I'm so passionate, as part of the 8-week program that I do with midwives on the Midwife Sparkle method, that we talk about circles of control. We talk about how you show women and birthing people the power they have, because a lot of the time birthing people come into the birth process on the external circle feeling they have no control and no influence, and they just kind of hand their power across to the midwife that's caring for them and go, do birth to me, do it, get it out, just I'll do whatever you say, I'll do it. It's like, actually, let's talk you through, do you know about this and that, and then kind of introduce, remind midwives as part of that process that yes, you have influence too, and so does the woman. Why don't you use it together? Then you got the formidable force and how you can work together, and it just blows people's minds. It's really
absolutely
really powerful.
I've been teaching hypnobirthing today with a client, and a lot of I don't know what your experiences are about hypnobirthing, because obviously that's slightly different to the Real Birth company stuff, but I don't really know the Real Birth stuff. So my experience of hypnobirthing is that it is real. It's all about birth and what that is, but is also the mindset stuff too, the learning what you're responsible for and what you're capable of and all of that, and breaking down the beliefs that we think are true that are not true, because they're just things that our head has in it.
Just that we tell ourselves, Yeah.
Because we're influenced by everything, like you said before. We're influenced by everything in our whole life, all of the experience that we've ever had, and that is our reality. So it's always going to be our reality unless we challenge it and we change it, and that's what hypnobirthing does. In a similar way to the 3-step rewind. So that is also using hypnotherapy techniques to take you somewhere deep in your mind and look at that. So that's what hypnobirthing does. But I was talking today with my client about responsibility, and about how the thing is, when you start to realize how much influence you do have over everything in your life, that is really scary, because then you're like, shit, now I have to be responsible for my actions, and I have to pay the price of those consequences, whether they're good or bad. And that takes us somewhere different. Whereas if we come into birth or into any situation not feeling that responsibility, it means we can easily blame someone else if it goes wrong. Oh well,
total external mindset.
Tell me about that, and why did no one told me to do that, and they said that I had to do this. And it's easy to do that. It's easier to do that than it is to say, actually, what do I have responsibility for here? How can I take responsibility for what happens to me and my birth and my pregnancy and my labour and my parenting journey? And for me, in my experience, that's what hypnobirthing does. It takes you from the mindset that you can't control anything and you have already failed and all of this, to things happen and how do you respond to them and what do you do about them. And and in some ways that is freeing, because it takes, although it gives you responsibility, it takes responsibility away as well, because you're not attaching meaning to things. You're not saying, oh, last time I failed because X, Y, and Z. We're just like, oh, right, I probably did have some influence in that series of events, but none of it ever had any meaning attached to it. No one was trying to make something bad happen to me. It just is how it worked out. Anyway, I don't know, I'm just going on a bit now.
Good. You're having a nice time. I'm having an awesome time.
I think, you know, it's funny when I ask people about healing birth and what it means, because I feel like I know what it means, and then people say different things every time, and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it is always different, like you said. It's always different because it always depends on the individual themselves. So for me, my healing birth was an elective cesarean. Because that was perfect for me in that space that I was in there then, and in that mind that I was in then. Right now, I would probably choose something different. You know, to be honest, home birth with an independent midwife and probably a doula as well. We throw one of them in,
Why
because
not?
we all know how great they are. So, you know, if I was to do it again, and if I was in that space with the mindset that I've got now, I'd probably do something very different. But isn't that life? Isn't that everything about life?
In hindsight, isn't it?
We make different decisions at different times of our life because things have changed and we've learned things and we've had growth and we've had healing and things change. So, you know, you've talked us through a little bit about your own birth trauma. I don't know if you want to tell us any more about it. You can do if you want to, but my next question is, what do you wish you'd known about yourself, about birth, about babies, or anything like that before you did it? Like, if you could go back in time and inject yourself with the information, what would you tell yourself?
And I guess it comes down to what I said earlier about that mindset. It was my expectation that, you know, birth is inherently physiological. This is what we're built to do. A lot of the time, we meddle, and it's the meddling that causes the problem. So don't let them meddle with you unless you know what they're doing. You know, I was very kind of could definitely see where intervention would save lives and where it is necessary. And I'm by no means sort of saying don't have intervention, but it's that thing about understanding. And this is, I guess, where the real birth stuff comes in, understanding how your body is physiologically meant to work, what helps that, what hinders it. And I would say I had a good knowledge of that as a midwife, but when I did the real birth training, that just that was like a level up. That was like for like, you know, like I'd leveled up and like kind of, you know, like some kind of computer game or something, like kind of leveled up a few levels and kind of really deep dived on the physiology and on so much of kind of just it's just too much to even talk about in this. It's just incredible, like the program.
I kind of understand the way you're going though.
Yeah,
adrenaline, oxytocin,
like all that. Yeah, even more like all about just all that, like all that. And I just, you know, about Braxton Hicks and what they do and why and how this, you know, just like everything. It was like an amazing refresher and more to do that training. So I wish I'd done the real birth training so I could understand in more detail, and which is what I then speak to birthing people about when I talk to them, is to say, like, you should be the first person to know if things are not flowing as they should. So you should know, this is happening. This is kind of not what I know happens in a physiological birth. What can I do? So what are your like kind of things you can do yourself with your partner, like release oxytocin, get rid of adrenaline triggers, etc., etc. And then you can be the first person to say, okay, I'm going to now choose to ask for help because I know things are not flowing as they should do, rather than being like, oh, the contractions have stopped, let's whack a full of oxytocin, let's use the drugs. Like, it's about empowering the birthing person to say, I know things are not as they should be because I know how my body should be working and it's not. And I've tried all the things that I can think of and all the things that I know, And now I think I'm now in that realm of like, I'm going to invite someone external in to kind of see what they can do now, because to keep us both safe and to keep things moving along. So I wish I'd had the real birth stuff. I wish I was me then.
Yeah,
I wish
yeah,
I'd done the emotional health coaching before then. I wish I'd done it from a, and I wish I'd done my midwife sparkle method program so I could understand all about how birth keepers and how that intertwines with birth and your own speaking your own truth and your own authenticity and the social pressure and the anxiety and all the stuff that go with that. So
it's funny. I'm laughing not because what you're saying isn't true or because it's funny, because it's just like whatever. But what I'm laughing about is because it's funny, because we end up in this situation where essentially I would say the same thing. Like if I could do anything, I would just go back as I am now to do that again, and it would be different. I know it would. I know for a fact that it would be so different. But of course, we would never be the person we are now without all of that in the
no,
first place, and we would
that's
never
it.
have had the opportunity to have the healing experiences that we've had. So it's funny, isn't it? But in a way, we find ourselves doing this work because what we're doing is we're providing the thing that we wish we'd had, and then what we're going to do is prevent people from having to undertake that healing journey
Yeah,
because they've got no choice, because they're broken.
yeah,
And you're helping more and more midwives from their angle to make sure that they know the best way to support people like you were. And I'm helping the birthing people, the women and birthing people and couples from this side, saying this is the stuff that I wish that I'd known about before I did it. Because then when you know this stuff, you can change your story.
yeah,
And a lot of us who've been through difficult experiences, and I think pretty much everybody that I've had on this series have ended up doing the work that they're doing through their own journey themselves. We've ended up doing this work and we're so passionate about it because we know the difference it makes, and we wouldn't be
yeah.
here doing it otherwise.
No,
So
it's so true.
we can feel quite bad, can't we, when we're self-employed and we're there waving our own flag going, I'm great, come to me, I want to help you. But we're only doing that because we genuinely are there saying, I don't want you to experience what I did. I want you to find a different way. I want your
Yeah,
story to be different. I want you to write your story instead of having it written for you.
yeah,
And there's something really powerful about that, because neither of us saying that we're doing the work for these people. They're doing the work for themselves,
yeah.
but we're just helping them and showing them how to do that.
That's so true.
So right then, Radha, this is the question. If you could forge a master plan to heal the world, what are you going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to heal the world?
Wow. I don't know where to start with that question, Cheryl.
It's a tricky one.
Mine's like
A high level one.
It is high level. That's high level.
Mm.
I need some crystals or something with this one. It's like, hi, raise the vibration, sort your headspace out. Wow, I don't know. I think a lot of it, it's all that we've been talking about, isn't it? It's awareness. It's people being willing to heal their stuff. Like, encouraging people to heal your stuff, to step into who you are, to not be afraid of who you are, to not be afraid to use your voice. You deserve to be heard. Whatever message you need to say deserves to be heard, and to kind of get that out, especially from my perspective, like you doing it from your side with the birthing people, me kind of doing that as well, but also doing it from the midwife perspective, and then people on the next level up that are doing it from a strategical perspective, looking at the actual system that we're working in. That's like a 3-tiered approach. So if you've got a couple that's been working with you and they're coming into a hospital to birth, or in a community environment to birth with a midwife that's been working with me,
Yeah.
into a system that's had someone at a strategic level working on this stuff and giving their, doing what they need to do. Can you imagine what kind of world that would be, and
Oh,
how Do you know what I mean?
Goosebumps just
I
from you even
know.
saying it. I'm like,
That's
wow, that
amazing.
would be awesome.
It would be amazing. And then, we know about epigenetics. We know a little bit about, you know, and this might be like way off, but like kind of how trauma can be passed down genetically, and how that imprints on, and then it's the nature nurture concept and all that. So if people were carrying children, birthing them in environments with midwives who had healed their stuff and were working authentically and speaking their truth and all that, and then they were further helping, and then like doulas were coming in and they were helping empower these couples to continue that journey, then the generational trauma thing stops.
Yeah.
It just stops right there.
Stop
You
trauma in
know,
its tracks.
it does. So you stop it from a generational familial thing with the kids and the parents, but you stop it from one midwife to another, midwife to student. That stops because that student's not training with a midwife that's traumatized, that's burnt out, that's anxious, that's full of her own internal emotional health problems. So she's seeing, this is how I do it. I heal my stuff. I face take my responsibility. I'm authentic. I did it. And then this strategic level, the managers are all managing from a place of love, not a place of fear. And then there's just more positivity and more love rather than fear and negativity, and you just flip it all around like that. So we've all got a massive role to play, and we're all, just like spinning our own plates, aren't we? We're all in our own little areas doing the best we can and spinning the plates and reaching out and helping people. And I think collectively what will happen is, if we all play a small part, that will come together collectively in a really big, ginormously, wonderfully empowering way, and can only have a positive impact. So I think we all need to play our part and empower each other.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important, isn't it, to no matter what we're doing, whether it's birth or whatever, but to be empowering people through our words and our actions and through everything that we're doing. Because when nobody loses, when we all bring each other up instead of pushing each other down, we all win. And with less trauma, we all win. We win on an individual level when midwives and healthcare professionals within the system, when they are less traumatized by their vicarious trauma, when they're seeing less trauma, when they become less fearful of birth as a result of that lessened trauma, then the strategic management can change, because then they can look and go, oh, this is not scary. No, actually, it's not scary, and nobody's scared and traumatized, and everybody's fine. Then I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, we're on the same page because, and like with lots of these lives that I've done, what we've said is, if we're going to heal the world, it starts with birth. Essentially, we didn't even need to say it because it was so obvious, but
Yeah.
that's where it starts. It starts with birth. That's why birth is the beginning. We know birth is the beginning. It's the beginning of life, but birth is the beginning of the healing as well.
Yeah.
For the people giving birth, but also for that baby who's then going to grow up untraumatized by the birth experience and the epigenetics and all of that. But then also can impact on the systems around us and the patriarchy and all of that. We're just going to change the systems of oppression because we don't need it anymore, and we realize and we see it for what it is and go, actually, this doesn't serve us. Because if we're only looking out for each other instead of always being in competition with each other and serving the patriarchy in that way, we can just say, hang on, this isn't life. Why don't we just all raise each other up? And I think, despite this year being really crappy on so many levels for so many people, and not least for people who are self-employed, that we've also seen a huge increase in people being really supportive of local community work, of local businesses, of small businesses, of entrepreneurship, of really, like, not everybody, but a lot of people have wanted to show support for that. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this live series as well. It was born out of that. I want to speak to all these people. I also want to showcase what people are doing, because that's how we show people that this work exists. And we all gain from it. We all gain from having these conversations so that other people can see them and know that they can access this kind of stuff. And you can get clients and I can get clients, and we can make our businesses work. But on another level that's completely separate to that, we can also be talking about our own experiences and sharing them, and also making them less stigmatized, and helping other people to start conversations too, which is our healing work. That's what we're doing.
I love
We're
that.
healing the world.
We are.
So thank you so much. We've been talking ages. How did that happen?
I don't know, but it's been the best 45 minutes I've had in a long time, Cheryl. Thank you so much. It's been awesome.
So
I've loved it. Thank you.
and it's so nice because I mean, throughout all of these lives, basically, I just get to chat to people that I like and admire, but also, make it something that's useful for people viewing too, and also get the opportunities to ask you for the final question. So, Radha, if people want to work with you or find out more about what you do, where do they find you?
So they can find me on my website. So I'm set my name. So www.radhawilsonjeffries.co.uk. I'm on Facebook under Reclaim Your Midwife Sparkle as my strapline thingy, or you can find me on my name again. I'm on Insta under my name, Radha Wilson Jeffries. Or send me a message, or send Cheryl a message, and she'll connect us together. So yes, my main focus is on the midwife stuff, my Midwife Sparkle Method program, which is an 8-week coaching program. I'm also doing workshops as well. So something that I'm stepping more into for the 2021 is I'm actually going to be running virtual, or hopefully face-to-face eventually, group workshops for NHS trusts, and group workshops for midwives, independent midwives, or even doulas, or anyone who's interested, about a comprehensive introduction to emotional health and a kind of run through of the program. So it's a 1-day program that I'll be sort of launching more in 2021 alongside the one-to-one program that I do directly with midwives. So if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to workshop at my trust, then please get in contact with me and we'll make it happen. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and Adriana has just commented saying that sounds brilliant. And I was just thinking, I hope Adriana's watching this. I'll have to tag her in it afterwards. She's actually a really amazing midwife in our trust who's been on the home birth team this year.
Amazing.
And the home birth team's been disbanded, and it's all very sad. Gone back to the community for now, hopefully temporarily. But I know that sounds like something amazing for picking up the spirits and being able to support
great
people.
for your CPD, great for your professional
CPD as well.
development.
How do you do that then? Are you getting in touch with trusts, or are they getting in touch with you? Or
either way, I've had quite a lot of the PMAs reach out to me. So like the midwives that are kind of helping to support other midwives that have had some additional training to do that. So I've had quite a few PMAs in the last couple of weeks reach out to me and say, "Did you do workshops? Will you speak at a conference? Like we just we really need something." So it's just something that has been in the pipeline that I've kind of been working on, and I'm like, obviously COVID hit, which stops a lot of that. So I've been doing, say, mostly one-to-one stuff, but I really want to now, with obviously everything that's been happening recently, is I really want to step more out and kind of either do it virtually on a platform, or actually go there when I can and do face-to-face in-house workshops with midwives.
awesome.
It's really cool.
That's one of the things on my list as well. I want to get into trusts and start working with people, trauma-informed hypnobirthing really, which is what I've launched this year. So at the moment, because I haven't gone through the hoops of kind of doing all of the, I don't know, have you done that, like get signed off so that you count for CPD points and all of that? Is that a thing?
Well, I suppose from a midwife perspective, as far as I know, you just, the CPD you do is about kind of your own continuous professional development. So if you do an e-learning course or whatever, you can still count it. Like,
I was thinking you have to get like RCM accreditation or something, which you can get for courses.
You can do, but your CPD is personal to yourself. You could read a book and write about how it's changed your practice, and it would still kind of, it might not be participatory. That's the difference. You could be CPD, but it might not be participatory if you've not done it as a part of some kind of process.
I see. Okay, that's really helpful for me as well.
That's all right.
Because I know that a lot of trusts train their midwives in hypnobirthing. They allow them to go and do that as CPD. And what I'm doing is trauma-informed hypnobirthing, kind of converting their traditional hypnobirthing course into a trauma-informed approach.
Amazing.
So I've done that with some hypnobirthing teachers this year, but not yet any in any trusts, but hoping that that's going to come in the new year as well.
Oh, it will, I'm sure.
So exciting.
It is.
So thank you so much for chatting,
Thank
and Adriana
you.
says thanks as well, and Zoe
Oh,
said earlier
good.
on, thanks so much for this live. It's really enjoyed being with you this evening. So
Oh, that's
um,
lovely.
that's really nice, and of course people can catch up on later on if they missed it live. They can go back and find it on Facebook or on YouTube, and if you've missed any of the live series, in fact, you can go back and find them on YouTube, the Simply Natal channel, if it's a bit tricky to find on Facebook, because they all disappear down the thing, don't they? A couple of them were on Instagram as Instagram lives, so they're available on Instagram still as well. Okay, well, that kind of leaves us at the end, and the end of the Healing Within and Without series, which is kind of sad, but also quite a relief. Like, okay, and now that is done.
Next
Let's move
chapter.
on to the next thing. And I'm going to have a little bit of a break over Christmas as well. So,
Yeah.
are you having a break over Christmas?
I am a short break, I think. Obviously, the thing is about working from home is that you can step upstairs to your work office, or you can close the door and you can have some time. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll probably have about a week off. Yeah, it's nice. But I've
lovely.
got lots of midwives that need my help, so I can't stay away for too long. I'm very busy. I'm very
Exactly.
busy, so
We
I'll have a
come
short
back
break.
raring to go, can't we? Oh, thank you so much, Radha. And we'll say bye for the sake of the people watching anyway, and then we can say bye on separately as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye
See you later.
bye.
Bye bye.